Hi. Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Can you
I
hear
still
me?
can't hear you, Lauren.
The hell? I don't understand. This is I literally I can hear myself and I can
Someone's just
hear
gonna
you.
have to read your lips.
No, this is you. Like, can everyone hear me? This is crazy. Can
Unless
people
it's just
hear?
me. Can anybody else
I think
is
it
anybody in the
must be
chat that can say
you.
that whether they hear you?
It's literally you. This is let's see. I literally can hear myself fine. No, this is you. Mhm. Yes, our stream is working. This is you.
Cannot hear anything.
Honestly, everybody can hear. I've been holding my breath waiting and almost died. Someone just Tommy, I'm sorry. But this I can hear I mean,
Is anybody in the
can
chat
everyone
saying
hear
that they can
us?
hear Lauren? Because I don't see anything in the comments or chats
Yes.
or anything.
Can people hear me? Do you want to edit mic settings? Yeah, everybody can hear me. We hear you. Wait, Michael, you said no, you can't hear me? Martin, why don't you log out and log in? And yeah, they can hear us both. Everybody's saying. I have no clue why you can't hear
Here,
me.
Lauren, let's go backstage. We'll try.
Guys, 1 second. He's backstage. I do not know what's going on right now. Yeah, let's see. Martin, you honestly should be. I'm gonna add you back.
There should
Are
be
you good?
the settings. You try the settings and try
Yeah.
to play with the
Yeah, no, you're
audio.
good. Yeah. Everything is fine and everybody else can hear us. So, I don't know why they can't hear you or you can't hear me. That's very strange. But
Unless it's me.
Michael, it's all your fault.
Is it just me or is it you?
No, it's just you. Everybody else can
Me?
hear me. Yeah. So, let's
Well, let me
yeah, really.
figure it out.
I don't know. Okay. So, Martin, are you able to start this?
Okay, there we go.
What
I
happened?
thought it was you. I guess it's me. Okay, fine.
No. Oh my God. Every time. Okay. All right. Guys, let's get started. All right, Martin. Yeah, that's Tommy said check your StreamYard speakers or something.
Yeah, we're all set now.
Okay, so I had to turn off the jury instructions, but I did want to hear them. That was important to me to hear Bev say her piece. But let's start, Martin, really quick. Let's start with the opening statements, closing statements from Alan Jackson, because I mean, I thought they were pretty convincing. You have been very neutral this entire time. You've been very good about that, just spewing facts. One thing I wanted Alan Jackson to focus on a little bit more was, I think, the lack of police work. I know that he came out swinging with the conspiracy, and that's how he ended. But I thought he could have focused a bit more. But one place that he really got me was when he showed the pictures of the taillight. And I had to zoom in. But something that Lally did was that he talked about the taillight and the fact that it was broken, and he had all these different timelines, but he didn't show us. We didn't see that. And I wanted to see more of that if he had proof of that. So just going back, what did you think of Jackson?
Yeah. So what I thought about Jackson, I mean, I have a few thoughts. I always, as an attorney, as a trial lawyer, I always put myself in that position. And I've been thinking about how I would actually close if I was Alan Jackson. I always think about how I would close if I was a prosecutor. Obviously, there's one area, which I thought overall Jackson was very strong. I question, and this is kind of what we've been speaking about in one of the earlier podcasts that we spoke about, how much to put emphasis on the conspiracy versus the lack of evidence that Karen Reed actually committed the crime. Because when you're kind of taking over the burden to prove something as a defense, that's not a position that you want to find yourself into. Remember, the judge always tells the jury the defense doesn't have to prove anything. The defense is presumed innocent. They don't have to put on any witnesses. And that's reiterated over and over and over again. But when you're coming up with this conspiracy theory, and that's what you're trying to have the jury buy, and that's what you're putting a lot of focus on, then the jury can start to think, well, I'm not so convinced that there's a conspiracy theory. And then that the knee jerk to that may be, well, okay, well, then we're going to find her guilty. That's not something that you want as a defense. And this is something I know we've spoken about it in the past on some other podcasts about the concept of, just saying that there's no evidence to prove that Karen Reed did the murdered John O'Keefe. So in terms of that, he did again, he played the whole conspiracy card, and he was, explaining a lot of things, and there is conjecture there is speculation there, and you're not going to get away from it. Maybe this is what's going on. Maybe they just knocked on the door. So you don't, I don't love that whole script. It could be he was kind of forced into that position as the posture that they were taking. But I thought, when I was thinking about this case, especially after the last few experts that testified on behalf of the defense, and that fresh in the jury's mind, these biomechanical engineers, Dr. Marie Russell, the other medical examiner from California, these are what's fresh in their mind. And all they testified to, they were all consistent saying that the injuries to John O'Keefe are not consistent with a motor vehicle accident. And that is your get out of jail free card. That is it. That's the winning argument. And but I've posted my last video that I did on my channel, which I just posted last night, was that, taking everything into consideration, when you have those very reliable experts saying that the injuries are not consistent and the damage to the vehicle is not consistent, how is that not reasonable doubt? And that is your winning argument. Whether there's a conspiracy or not is not. So I thought, he did stress it, but I think that if I'd be doing this, I think that my main focus on my closing argument would be to show how our experts completely knocked are much better than Trooper Paul. We have Dr. Marie Russell, and our experts just kick. And therefore, that's how we're going to win the case. Also, something else I noticed, I don't know if you want to cut me off at any point.
Please keep going. Someone said, because I'm not putting comments up just yet, Creed M said Lally didn't put when John O'Keefe was hit on the timeline. And that's something also that's big, because they've changed it a few times throughout the course of this trial. So I think that's important to note. The timelines have been very off.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because, he was putting everything up on the timeline there. And you would think that the actual time of death of the murder is, time of the murder at least, is an important time, and at least give us a little bit of an estimation. Say, okay, maybe it's not 12:32 or whatever it is, but say the range of the time, sometime between that. I think that's a great point. Something that I personally like to do in my closing arguments that I thought there could have been some more room here, and something that I thought, like, as I'm listening to the evidence, as because I put myself in the position, I was thinking, when the text messages between Proctor and his buddies on that private text that he had, so one of them said something about something stinks.
Something's rotten or something. Yeah.
I think he said something stinks. I would have loved to have that as my opening slide, saying this is what Proctor's own buddy said on the first day of this investigation.
Yeah.
And he was 100% right. Start off with, and personally, I like to have a lot of slides. I like to walk the jury through a lot of slides, show different pieces of evidence. And even if I'm making certain points, I think in today's generation also, it's hard for you to just get up there and for someone to just listen to you go on and on and on for an hour. So I like to mix it up. I like to put.
Right. I gotta say, it didn't sound like that. And I know how it sounds when you say, oh, Lally's boring, Jackson's not. I get it. Lally has to, paint this whole big picture. He has more to prove, so to speak. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it was tough to listen to him. And it was really easy to listen to Alan Jackson. And I don't know if that's because of his delivery or because of the content, but I thought that when Lally had to say the part about Karen not taking off her shoes. So that is supposed to be more, not motive, but that's supposed to be more proof. Oh, she didn't take off her shoes because she killed him. She knew he was dead. So she was like, screw his rules. I was like, what? That seems like you're really reaching to put that in your closing argument. That to me, as a juror and just as somebody who's not a trial expert here, that just means you don't have enough physical evidence that you're actually including this. And that was, in my opinion, what his entire closing statement was. It was more circumstantial stuff, because at that point, with his experts and the Emmy and Trooper Paul, again, just kind of making this into one big, just very confusing case, I think that's all he had. I don't think he had any real physical evidence.
Well, that point, I completely agree with you. I think that was just completely grasping at straws, like talking about how she didn't take off her shoes off. That right away hit me as like, oh, come on. Like, is that really what? No, completely.
Exactly.
I'm completely on the same page with you about that. No, he did point to the forensics. He did point to some of the other more solid evidence that he had. Actually, I don't think I heard once Trooper Paul's name in his closing argument. I don't think he mentioned Trooper Paul at all.
No, I think just Jackson did, because I think he knew that was probably smart of him. Yeah, he knew.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that is, again, it's in my watching this case really from beginning to end. That's what it comes down to. It really comes down to the accident reconstructionist here. Trooper Paul is going to say that, yeah, it all makes sense that his arm was, and he tried like to explain a little bit how, like he held his hand up that there's only 12 inches of there's 12 inches of injuries, but there's only 6 inches of damage on the car. How does that make sense? And he tried to explain, well, if you just do this, then it makes sense. Like, are you kidding me? Like, these are biomechanical. You think biomechanical engineers didn't have that part of their calculation that maybe he would be lifting his arm up? I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
So
no, agreed.
So I think that was a little silly, but I do want to also talk about a little bit just Alan Jackson, because I think, it was much easier to listen to. He's, he's certainly on a different level or caliber than Lally. I think that's pretty obvious. The way that he delivered his closing argument was better. He just has the passion a little bit more, and he knows how to use his voice and raise it and lower it, like that, all those skills he's got. I do want to just point out two things, because people, they think I get too much on one side. I don't have any criticisms. So I will say this: when I deliver a closing argument, I don't read it. I never read it, and I think it just comes off scripted, and I want to come off as authentic. And I just feel that you connect with the jury when you're just talking off the cuff. And of course, you're going to have some bullet points. You're going to have some of the points. You have to refer to your notes. But I just don't like it. I understand, like, people want to do it, especially when you have, a televised, thing that you don't want to just kind of go off script, and who knows where you're going to end up, talking about. And that happens, by the way, in trials. You just you may start just blurring things out, which may be embarrassing. And especially in this world where someone's just going to get that clip and make it go viral and make you look silly. I understand the reason why you would want to script it out. I just feel like, to your client, the best closing argument, and this is how I feel, is that just to make it much more real, much more conversational, much more we're having a conversation here than I'm reading you, a State of the Union address. So that was one thing.
In this case, though, I feel like there's so much in this case that you have to point out, and it's been, 9 weeks now, let's say. I'm sure, I don't know if he necessarily read it. Maybe he just read some bullet points. You have to have bullet points, right? You don't just go.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. No, I for sure have bullet points. Yeah. No, of course. You have to cover, I have the things I need to cover. There are certain quotes that I'll put up, or I'll have to quote for them, which I did. I felt it was a little bit scripted. It could be maybe some parts were, maybe sometimes he went a little bit off script. But I feel in general it was scripted. Again, he did it very well because he's Alan Jackson, and he was able to deliver it not like a regular person would get up there and read a speech. Lally was very clearly not scripted. He was much more, just talking off the cuff. I do also, let me just point out one other thing. Maybe we can get to this also. The fact, Lally started off, and this is when I was thinking about this, if I was a prosecutor, how would I start off the closing argument? And I felt the same way. If I was in Lally's position, I would start off very similar to what he did. I would just knock it home a little bit stronger. And I would say something to the effect of the following. I would say, we don't always have a confession in a case. And in this case, we have a confession by the defendant. And he started, and she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. This wasn't a question. There was multiple witnesses that heard her say that. And it's an admission. It's a confession. The whole question in this case is whether she actually hit him with the car. She actually confessed to the crime. This case is over by her own confession. So that's, I think, he could have said, I think, a little bit stronger. He did start off that way. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And if you're Alan Jackson, you have to anticipate. And I always talk about this in my videos. You got to anticipate what the other side is going to argue, right? This is an obvious argument. Of course, Lally's going to say that she admitted and confessed to the crime. What is your response to that? And you have to be able to come up with a response. And that was completely absent from Alan Jackson's closing arguments. He should have at some point addressed what a possible explanation for her saying that is. Now, it's a very easy explanation. I was thinking in my own mind, you can say, well, she was hysterical and she convinced herself after questioning herself the whole entire morning. Did I hit him? Did I hit him? I must have hit him. Okay, I hit him. So it's not a confession. It's she's completely hysterical. She convinced herself of things when you're hysterical, and that's what she did. And also, let's not forget something else I think you can point out if you're Alan Jackson. Let's also not forget, even if she would say, I hit him, and let's say she even thinks that she did hit him, but the experts show how it's impossible that that's what you did. You can think that you hit someone all day long, but if the science and the physics all say that you didn't, well, then guess what? You didn't. You're just mistaken. So those are arguments.
That's a really good point. That's a
really
good point.
I think these are arguments that Alan Jackson should have made in his closing argument. He must have anticipated Lally saying it. And in terms of Lally, he's got to figure out some way to go against the biomechanical engineers, which his only option was that maybe he was holding up his hand like this. And if you would think that the biomechanical engineers wouldn't have thought about that, that's ridiculous, So,
well, I think that Jackson at this point, in terms of Karen's admission that she hit him, I think he doesn't even really want to address that because it wasn't in any of the grand jury testimony. He did a pretty good job of discrediting a lot of the witnesses one way or another. Except for maybe a firefighter at the very beginning. I don't remember their names off the top of my head, unfortunately, but I know what you're saying, but I feel like he's kind of just like, aren't we beyond that? Aren't we past that? Haven't I proved to you that these people can't be trusted? And they're the ones that heard her say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Jen McCabe specifically was the one who heard it 3 times, but she was the one who didn't put it in her grand jury testimony. So I feel like maybe he's just kind of relying on that. Or you have Katie McLaughlin, who also heard that as well, but I think they were trying to discredit her with her relationship to the Albert family, or Caitlin Albert specifically. And then, it's the fact also that Jen McCabe, when she was being cross-examined, she said something totally different than when she was on direct. She had said she heard Karen say it to an EMT, and then she said at one point that she heard Karen say it to an officer, a police officer. And she knows the difference between the two. So I think that's why he probably didn't bring it up, because he's just like, haven't I proven this to you guys? That's just my opinion.
I mean, it's possible. Again, it's like you said, it's a long trial, who knows what's fresh in the jury's minds. This was weeks ago when they took the stand. And also there were, as Lally pointed out, it wasn't just Jennifer McCabe. He pointed out to some other firefighters, some other paramedics. And also remember that as you're weaving this conspiracy with McCabe's and the Alberts and Brian Higgins, really the paramedics are not and shouldn't be involved with that conspiracy. So it's harder to tie in them into the web. And it's when you have these other responding firefighters or paramedics. So I think it was an oversight. I think he should have. And that was just, one part of the mistake that one of the, I guess, criticisms that I would say of Alan Jackson on his closing arguments.
Somebody said also, you have a police officer, Saroff, that heard her admit. Tommy said this, Tommy Bernhard. He said, you have police officer Saroff that heard her admit to murder and just went to the donut shop instead of arresting her. So that's it. I know what he's saying. He's saying that, like, if she said this and all these people claim to hear her say this, including police officers, well, why not book her right there on the spot if they heard it correctly?
they're still missing a lot of pieces. Even if somebody would say I hit him, was it intentional? Was it accidental? I don't think they're ready to arrest someone just because, there's an accident that happened and someone ended up, well, again, at that point, they didn't know if he was dead or not. But, just to right away book him, I don't know if that's like the knee jerk in this case. You don't know what context it is. There's a lot more questions that need to be answered before you start arresting people, I believe.
But this
So
just goes back to the reasonable doubt, where it's like, I guess I've heard people say, oh, I think a verdict is going to come back tonight. And if a verdict comes back tonight, I'm going to go out on a limb and just say, I think it's going to be not guilty if it comes back that quickly. Because right away they're going to be like, I didn't see any hard proof that, and something else that I think you have to rationally think about. Like and sorry to interrupt you. I think you were going to say something else, but just my stream of consciousness here is like, yes, a conspiracy totally sounds nuts. But you know what sounds nuttier? That nobody saw any pieces of taillight. And then over the next 3 weeks, you collect how many pieces from a taillight that supposedly was just either missing a piece or it was completely shattered. You would, even though it was snowing, you would see it more. I think you would see some of it in the morning if it was shattered everywhere. So it's like, if you believe Officer Barrow's story, or if you believe or not story, but his testimony, and if you believe Proctor and Buchanan's, I just feel like that right there, you're still gonna find taillight pieces in the morning, even though it's snowing. So the fact that nothing was really found is just, it's strange. It's so strange. And then whoop, here we go. We're finding pieces everywhere, hundreds of pieces as big as a salad plate. Like that's well, right? That's confusing. I am just like, I'm scratching my head. I don't understand.
yeah, I mean, that was a very solid point that he made. The fact that in the beginning they didn't find any taillights, and then all of a sudden all these really big pieces of taillights coming up. Now there was a blizzard going on, and you can kind of understand it. But 47 pieces, you're not going to find one. Everyone's looking for anything, and they can't find even one.
Not
and then
one.
even when
Exactly.
And then even when the crime scene, like the special unit comes out to collect evidence, all they can find is 6 or 7 pieces. And then somehow between that time and the next month or whatever it was, then now all of a sudden you find another 40 pieces coming out. So that was a good point. Also, that also tied in together with, that's why I always say, like, sometimes you're hearing about different pieces of evidence or questions coming out during the trial, and you're not sure why are they bringing out this specific point? Like you're wondering, like, okay, where are you going with this? And what Jackson did in the closing, what you're supposed to do, by the way, is that, you bring out some of these points during direct or cross-examination, and then you come back in closing and explain why you were bringing out those points. And that's what Jackson did by showing that there's a reason why he changed the tow time on the vehicle, where on the affidavits he wrote 5:30 p.m., right? And then the actual tow was done at 4:17. Well, the first piece of taillight was found at 5:45 p.m. If it's being towed at 5:30, it's not possible that Proctor planted it. But if it was actually towed at 4:17, well, that gives plenty of time. That gives plenty of time for him. So that's how it all connects together. And also, just one other thing, if you don't mind, I was wondering myself in one of my videos when I was analyzing this, I was wondering, at some point the prosecution put out the text messages between Laura Sullivan and Karen Reed that morning, right? The morning of, and Laura Sullivan something like text Karen Reed, and Karen Reed responds, "John's dead. We found him in the morning. We found him in the whatever. We found him in the snow this morning in the front lawn." And I was really wondering, like, what are they getting at here? Like, I'm just curious about what they're doing with these text messages between Laura Sullivan. So I thought initially it was just to show how kind of cold Karen Reed was being with Laura Sullivan, that, like, not being like, oh my gosh, my heart's broken. I lost my, best friend of my life. And, like all of that, which you would expect out of a long-term boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. That's what I thought initially. But then in the closing arguments, Lally, he pointed out that he believes the reason why he introduced this was the fact that she told Laura Sullivan, we found him at 5 a.m. Did you catch that? He said that
I did not catch that. Okay.
Yeah. So he said that Karen Reed responded to Laura Sullivan in those text messages, we found him at 5 a.m. Now, remember, they didn't find him till like closer to 6 a.m. So why is she telling Laura Sullivan, I found him at 5 a.m.? And part of the argument for the prosecution was, or for Lally was that, remember, there was a gap between 5:18 when certain surveillance cameras caught her traveling. They caught her traveling at 5:18 a.m. and then she doesn't arrive to the McCabe's until 5:35. Well, what happened? It's a 2-minute drive or something. What happened in between 5:18 and 5:35? His suggestion was, again, this is all speculation, which the judge
Yeah.
very clearly, even though he cut off the jury instructions, the judge very
Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
tells the jury, do not speculate. But it's speculation. But he was suggesting that she went to 34 Fairview to see if John's there and dead. Then when she saw that he was there, then she went back to Jennifer McCabe's house, and then she put on this whole show. And that's why she was able to identify that was John O'Keefe's body when they eventually got to 34 Fairview. But that's why he connected it to say that's why she texted Laura Sullivan that we found him at 5 a.m. because that would make more sense to when she actually went there without anybody knowing about it between 5:18 and 5:35. Now, it's
Okay. Yeah.
like you see the connection here. Like
I see what's happening. I guess, sure, you could sort of add that to everything else. Maybe I didn't really see the time as much of an issue because I mess up times all the time. In this case, I don't think she was trying to be careful. I think that if you're guilty of something, maybe you try to be extra careful. She was, I don't want to use the word hysterical because every witness used the word hysterical. They really wanted to get across that she was hysterical, but maybe that's just what she was. She was hysterical in writing this text. I don't know what happened. Maybe she took another route. Maybe I have no idea what happened in that time period. I know that certain videos were also missing along that route as well. That's what we learned throughout this trial. A lot of things were missing, apparently, but no, that didn't necessarily bother me as much. But again, that's because I felt like a lot of the timelines weren't accurate or they changed a lot throughout the course, of this trial and the pre-trial hearings as well. So
I think your explanation is more in line with what I was thinking. About. She was just texting Laura Sullivan, whatever, 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Who knows what time it is? She just woke up and that's all hysterical. She's not looking, oh, wait, was it 6 a.m.? Was it 5:45? Was it, I don't know, 5 a.m.? We found him at 5 a.m. So that makes more sense. I think there is a decent question into where she was between 5:18 and 5:35. But again, everything is just speculation. You can't convict someone based on speculation. Come on. It's got to come down to the evidence and the facts. As Lally ended off his closing arguments with a quote from John Adams about facts, so it's all about the facts, and there he is giving all this speculation and guesswork, and then he ends off with facts.
And and listen, if he had a good accident reconstruction expert, maybe he would have more facts. Or if this entire case didn't necessarily depend on the witnesses that were made to look not great on the stand by the defense. And I think that it did work for a number of them. I brought this up on a live stream this morning. I can't really get over certain things. Like Matt McCabe and Brian Albert saying the guy never went into the house. Exactly. And I compare this to something that I do with my kids. Like if I'm trying to trick my son, and again, don't judge my parenting, everybody, don't come at me, but I'll say, Paisley, the ice cream shop is closed, right? And she'll be like, exactly, it's closed. And then we're like, see, you know what I mean? So that's sort of where I got that. And I can't get that out of my head because it's like, why do you text like that? That's strange. I don't know. I didn't like that. I felt like maybe this conspiracy didn't happen, right? But these people know something. They're withholding some type of information that could help us figure out what happened to John. I don't know what that information is. And my other thing is that the only person, let's say, that had motive to kill John or want to not kill him, sorry, because I don't think anyone intended on killing him that night. I really don't. I don't think anyone was like, let me kill John O'Keefe tonight. I think the only person that would have motive to harm him would factually would be Brian Higgins because of what we saw in the courtroom. We saw this side relationship, whatever the hell you want to call it. We can hear all we want to hear about Colin Albert. I don't know what went on in that neighborhood. I don't know if he went across John's lawn and he pissed him off. We don't know. We weren't there, but we did see these text messages, and we did see a text that said, well, the night that John died. I'm not saying that means Brian Higgins did anything, but he would be the person that probably would have a reason or whatever, have motive to harm. And he was one of the people that did destroy his phones, and he did have some tears on the stand, and I he didn't bother me on the stand. I didn't think he was like, some big liar, so to speak. I couldn't tell, but what I could tell was he destroyed his phone and he threw it in a dumpster in a military base, and he destroyed a SIM card. And then there was some crazy butt dials going on. So that was weird. That was weird. And that sticks with me. And you saw today that some of the witnesses were in the courtroom, and Brian Higgins was not there. Now, I have questions. Did he cry on the stand because he was sad about John? Did he cry because he felt guilty for what went on between him and Karen, even though I didn't think it was that big of a deal what went on? Or did he cry because he's got this guilt inside? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I was going to say that Alan Jackson kind of did suggest that maybe they went in, maybe like he went inside a little bit, and then he actually didn't get to the kitchen. He just met at the door by Brian Higgins or Brian Albert. And then just some quick exchange about, hey, your girl's texting me and they're all drunk. So therefore one thing can lead to the next. And before you know it, somebody gives him a punch and he ends up falling down the stairs, which they didn't intend, but now he's dead. And now what are they going to do about it? Right. So that was the kind of the picture that Alan Jackson was painting. By the way, when I was playing this all in my mind, because this is what I do because I'm weird. So when I was playing this out in my mind, like as the defense attorney of Alan Jackson would be making this closing argument, I was thinking that I didn't think Michael Proctor was in the gallery. I don't think I saw him there. And
I didn't see him.
Right. And I think I may have been able to say something like, I was thinking in my mind to be able to say something like the following, saying something, I would have wanted Michael Proctor to be here so we can, and remember how he ended off his cross-examination was shame on you. And after going through everything that Michael Proctor did and about talking about her in certain ways that I wouldn't even mention those things, even to you in my closing arguments, shame on you. I wish he was in this courtroom so we can all look at him right now and say shame on you. And I wish that he'd be in this courtroom that when you guys come back with your non-guilty verdict, you can all look him in the eye and say, we expect better and we don't approve of what you're doing. And I hope that he's here when you're all reading your non-guilty verdict. Something else also I thought was very interesting, that Alan Jackson pointed out was the fact that, remember, Karen Reed's phone, which was a very significant part of the testimony, that her phone connected to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that was at 12:36. And so he pointed out, right, which we've pointed out probably in our videos, that Jennifer McCabe said that she was looking outside the window and saw the vehicle there up to 12:45. Alan Jackson said today 12:50. Also, what Alan Jackson pointed out today, which I thought this is the first time that it hit me, but the first time that he pointed out was that John O'Keefe's phone registered as taking steps at 12:32.
Yeah.
So even if you want to buy all of this idea that when you're in the car, your phone will register steps, which I think he should have brought out because it doesn't make any sense. And the jury, and something I always tell the jury, which again, Alan Jackson didn't do, there's another area which I always talk about, which is talking about the jury instructions. Now I understand it's only an hour. You only have an hour to get through everything, but talking about certain jury instructions, I always feel is important. One of the jury instructions, which is so important, is to use your common sense. Use your common sense.
She said that. I thought she said that.
No, the judge did. I'm talking about Alan Jackson.
Sorry. Okay. I was like, wait, she did say that. Okay.
Yeah, no, but I'm closing. Then I say, use your common sense. Do you think that it would make any sense to have an Apple iPhone or smartphone that's supposed to record your steps, but it's so inaccurate because every time you're in the car, it's recording steps? That makes no sense, right? Obviously, that's not going to happen. So he could have pointed out that. And then here you have his phone. So even if you're going to buy all that stuff, let's say you're going to buy it, but now you have his phone that's recording steps at 12:32, which
Mhm.
Karen Reed must have left because it takes at least, on a good day, 6 minutes. That was the testimony, to drive from 34 Fairview back to John O'Keefe's house, which her phone connects at 12:36. So that means she must have left by 12:30, the latest, and his phone is recording steps at 12:32.
Yep.
How does
I
that
mean,
make sense?
you're right. And just going back to all of the experts here, uh, we brought this up this morning on a live stream with the Sarge. It's all of these cell phone experts, namely from the state. You bring in two different experts to debunk something when usually you just go off Cellbrite, right? Usually it's like, this is what we use. This is what we always use. It's credible. It's reliable. But now I'm going to bring in two different experts saying two different things. And to someone like me, who I'm assuming there's a lot of people like me in the jury who are not technically savvy, as you can see, as I make everyone wait on live streams 5 extra minutes for me to get my shit together.
You mean
But
me?
yeah, yeah, there you go. Well, this is your fault today. But
I
no,
take complete
uh,
responsibility. I
I'm
apologize.
I'm sitting there. I'm just like, I don't even understand what they're saying anymore. Just make it simple. So I guess my question is that, are the jurors going to see these two different experts from the state? Are they going to see that as, oh yeah, they make some great points, they're very credible, that search never happened? Or are they going to be like, well, that's weird, why do they need two different experts to prove something or disprove something, I should say, that Cellbrite, what they normally use, proved? Are they going to question that, or is it going to be good? I don't know.
Right. Well,
I'm not sure.
I mean, I spoke about this one of my videos. That
Oh.
the the experts, really
Oh.
good idea to go check them out. But
Yes, go check out his videos. They are really good. Yeah.
no, but the two experts that the state called, I think that this is also another area which Alan Jackson could have really slammed home, because think about it.
Mhm.
First of all, these two experts don't work for the state. This isn't like Trooper Paul coming in and saying, okay,
Yeah.
he's a Massachusetts State Police,
Mhm.
okay. Here you have these two experts which are being paid, okay, and they're very, very highly qualified. And what I've spoken about in my videos, I believe, if I'd be sitting on the jury, that the state's experts, in terms of the digital forensic experts, they kicked, maybe I shouldn't say kicked, but they certainly were more qualified in my mind than Richard Green when it comes to the IT part. Okay. And
Okay.
they explained everything down to science. They explained how this all works. And yeah, they didn't use the same iOS. And okay, people are going to start, making that's end user, and then, show the user history. Okay. Look,
But don't you
these,
have to do that to be
I,
accurate? I guess I
look,
don't get
I
it.
mean,
That's why I don't get it.
I think I think it's a decent point. I think it's a nice argument to be made. But if you're weighing experts the same way that the biomechanical experts that the defense put up completely went to town on Trooper Paul, and it wasn't even, they weren't
Yeah.
weren't even
Yeah.
playing. It's like the major leagues against the little league. Like, that's what it was, Trooper Paul against these biomechanical engineers. So
Mhm.
not in the same way, but certainly when, again, and I see experts all the time, the experts that the state put out for the digital forensic experts, they just were better. They were better. They explained everything, exactly what Richard Green's mistakes were, and exactly why in Celebrite they have to correct the problem that Richard Green is coming to when he's looking at it, and he's not as trained as they are. They don't then people like him don't understand everything that's going on in the background of everything. So again, if I was on the jury, if it comes to digital forensic experts, I would
Yeah.
certainly side with the side. But I just want to point out that Alan
Yeah.
Jackson completely could have used this against the state, because you can say,
Yeah.
look, when the state cares about it, they care about it. So then they'll hire all these experts. That these experts are amazing. Jessica Hyde and what was the guy's name?
She
Ian
was
Rick.
she was wonderful. Yeah, great credentials.
Right. So
But
when they want to show you experts, they have no problem spending whatever it takes to get
yeah,
these level experts in front of you. But when it comes to accident reconstruction, they're happy with this guy who took a course, Trooper Paul, for a few weeks. And, he's their accident reconstructionist, when they could have, these two biomechanical engineers were available to them, and they
yeah,
could have
and
called them. And if this is all about seeking the truth, then,
yeah.
and that's what the Commonwealth's supposed to do, right? They're not here to just look for convictions. So if that's the truth, then they should have put on all the information in front of you. Why do we have to go and bring these experts into for you to consider? That's
I'm
just
just
not
going
the
to
way.
read something from Amber E. She said Mr. Green was the only expert out of the three that had the full body of evidence before him as opposed to the other two. So this seemed to be something that Lally had also asked the reconstruction guys. Do you have all of the evidence? Do you have all of the information? Do you have everything? So Amber's pointing out that those experts, they didn't have everything. And
They didn't have the exact iOS and the exact phone. That's right. I'm just saying
right. So how
in
do you,
terms of expert.
yeah, I get it. Yes. In terms of their credentials, absolutely. Me personally, I heard that they didn't have the exact, I was just like, okay, you need the iOS. And also this just goes back to, I don't know if you said this or somebody else said this, but this is more the defense of Jen McCabe that you're spending so much time on. Cool. Let's say you did debunk the 2:27 a.m. search. Sure, whatever. Let's say that never happened. But also, what hasn't proven to have happened is Karen Reed hit him with a car. So
Exactly. And that was the
that's where
point that
I'm
I
you
made.
and you spent, yeah, sorry. Well, it's like, yeah, you spend all this time on that, and it's like, okay, maybe not, but well, what does it matter if she didn't, Jen McCabe is not being charged with murder. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that would be an opening for Alan Jackson to say, look, experts about the
yeah,
digital forensic experts, maybe Jennifer McCabe did the search, maybe she didn't do the search. And let's not just get lost in the weeds here. Let's remember
yeah,
what this case is all about, whether Karen Reed actually hit the car. And like I said, it all comes down, in my mind, it all comes down to those biomechanical engineers, whether they, which ones you're going to believe. And I think it was
yeah.
pretty simple to everyone, who were the better experts there.
So then what do you have to say about that? That Richard Green was the only one that conducted his research and his analysis with the correct iOS system. So you would still say that the other two were, let's take their credentials out of it. Would you still say the other two were more credible than he was in their findings?
I would say that if I was sitting on the jury and I've seen them, and again, I agree with the point that they didn't
Yeah,
have the exact model of the phone and the
yeah,
iOS and whatever, but they went through step by step and they explained and they showed with slides why it's going to look like a search when it really wasn't. And they laid it out. Now,
right.
if you, and if this was me, again, if I'm Alan Jackson and I'm very confident that Richard Green is just going to knock these guys out of the park, then I would say,
Mhm.
okay, look, here are the slides that these other experts have shown. And this was their explanation. Why don't you explain to the jury why they're wrong? That would be if you're very confident in your expert. Okay.
Okay.
If you're not so confident in your expert, then you just let the expert testify to what he says in his affidavit. Don't really have too much interaction or too much explanation to what the other experts say, and then just hang your hat that hopefully the jury
Yeah.
will listen to your expert. I think that if all these, Richard Green was really the better expert in the room, they should, and as an expert, you're allowed to watch the trial and watch what the other experts are saying. These other
Mhm.
experts took his affidavit apart line by line, and they explained why he's wrong. Well, now, if you're Richard Green now here's your chance. Here's your chance to
Yeah.
tell the jury why they're wrong about your affidavit. Here's your chance. Go for it. And that didn't happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
you have the
That's a good
iOS, you
point.
have the exact thing. So I think, again, if this was me, I would have met with my expert afterwards and I would say, what are you going to answer to them? And if he doesn't have a good answer, I'd say, okay, we're not going to talk about it. We'll just talk about your findings. And that's what happened, which is why, since I'm a little bit more, I'm a little bit more in the trenches here when I know what's going
Yes.
on in the back rooms. That's why when I saw that, I said, okay, these two other experts are better than Richard Green, and I would
Okay.
go with them faster than I would with Richard Green.
And
So
I get
I
what you're
know,
saying. That sounds like a good plan. Go through and say why they're wrong. Or it could just be like, well, they didn't use the correct version of iOS, and that's your answer. Who knows? But I also feel like I just keep going back to Trooper Paul, but after Trooper Paul, I kind of feel like the defense was like, well, our list of 70 witnesses, yeah, we're only going to use 3, and we're not going to spend too much more time on any of this because we don't have to. Could be a little of that too. I don't know if you agree or if anyone
yeah, I
else
mean,
agrees, but yeah.
what about how many witnesses they could have called and didn't call?
No, well, I just mean like again, and same goes for okay, people talking about are they going to put Karen Reed on the stand? Well, I don't think they had to. I don't think there was a need for that
No,
at
no.
all. Again, and I think we have Trooper Paul and also the medical examiner, Dr. Sporty Bello to thank. I think we have those two to thank that really didn't make anybody feel good about Karen definitively hitting him with her car.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So
And again, I don't know. And I didn't see the witness list. Maybe you've seen the witness list. I don't know who
yeah,
they listed as, you can have 70 witnesses that are all police officers, people that, touched an evidence bag at one point that, possibly you can bring in and testify, or
yeah,
possible rebuttal witnesses or whatever it is. But for accident reconstructionists, it could be they just had Trooper Paul. And well, that's what I would assume. They just had Trooper Paul as an accident reconstructionist. And that's why that was the only person they called in specific, with that. And again, like I said
yeah.
in other podcasts, you always list a whole bunch of extra witnesses just in case you need them. But
Oh
you're
yeah, I
never
mean the
you're never
defense,
planning on
they
calling.
had John O'Keefe's father on the list. They had a lot of people who I saw personally whose names had been mentioned in like different Facebook groups. So and so called this person. One of the guys was on Jen McCabe's call log, that he was one of the few people that didn't pick up her early morning phone call, but he did pick up later in the morning. He was on the list. I mean, they had a lot of people and some of the same people, I guess, that the state had. But
Yeah.
again, it really, by the end of this, it wasn't necessary. And I was happy to hear them, Alan Jackson, say, I guess, like, look, we you guys saw 8 weeks of like this this case, 8 weeks for a hit and run. It shouldn't have had to be like that, but it was. And that is where my head went this entire time. Like, you could have really simplified this and not even made it so complicated, not even made it to the point of like, look at all these witnesses, aren't they sketchy? They're not. It was I don't know. I
Yeah.
was I
Well,
was just disappointed in the way that the state handled all of that and wasted, in my opinion, wasted a lot of time.
I know we've spoken about this specific issue in the past, and that's I'm going to push back
Yeah.
just a little bit
Please
because
do. Please do. Yeah.
because technically it should be a much simpler, shorter, faster case. But it's
Mhm.
only because Karen Reed got these defense attorneys and then started spinning this whole conspiracy that the state now is required to call every single person who was at that house, every
Yeah.
person who ever called anybody that day and that night, and get everyone's stories out there so that the prosecution can say, there's no conspiracy here. We called everybody on the witness. And think about it. Every single
Yeah.
person in that house had to get up here and lie to you. Like, is this
Mhm.
really conspiracy? Give me a break. And Lally did do that a little bit. I think he could have done that a little bit more. He just kind of made
Yeah.
one comment about how Brian Albert, a police officer of 27 years, would go kill somebody. Yeah, I think he had a good line about this. He said they just
Yeah.
got back from a funeral from a police officer that they didn't even know, and now they're going to go kill a police officer they do know, and then Brian Albert, a police officer of 27 years, is going to leave that body on his front lawn. Like, does that make any sense as a
Okay, but
conspiracy?
wait, then let me stop you. You go to a police officer's funeral you don't know, but you know that there's a body of a police officer on your front lawn and you don't come out, a fellow police officer? I mean, come on. You don't go outside at all. You don't assist the police after this. You don't, I mean, that's super disrespectful as well.
Yeah,
Especially
I
if he was
agree.
at your house and you were hanging he wasn't at your house. You were at the bar with him and you were hanging out with him. So why don't you go outside? Why don't you figure out what's going on and how you can help? One of your brothers in blue just died in a suspicious manner at the time on your front lawn. You know what I
Yeah, I
mean? Like,
agree. I
where,
mean, hi-
yeah,
his story will be that he didn't wake up until Jennifer McCabe burst into his room, as we heard, and woke him up, and Chloe was nowhere to be found, of course. And then he comes downstairs, probably in his pajamas, and there's already paramedics there. And what does he need to go out there as a first responder? So that will be his response. But again, I want to come
yeah,
back to really what Lally was saying, which is a good point, a good argument to say that give me a break. This is how a 27-year-old would want to kill a police officer and leave him on his front lawn. I mean, like, give me a break. There's actually, by the way, recently a trial with a trooper, I think, who was on trial, who allegedly murdered his wife and tried to cover it up or make it look like a suicide because he knows how to make these things look like suicides. Anyway, I
well,
think
it
that
goes back
Lally
to the
could have.
fact. No, sorry to interrupt you. It goes back to the fact that I don't think anybody meant to kill him. Like,
That was
no,
Alan
they weren't.
Jackson's
Yeah,
point.
that was the whole thing where it's like he's not trying to cover up a murder. You're right. He would know how to cover up a murder if they intentionally murdered someone. I think it just goes back to the fact yeah, you're right. He wouldn't do that. I think it was an accident. Whoever did this, it was an accident and they did not mean to do it. So there
Yeah,
was
I mean
no
that's a
type of cover
possibility.
up. Yeah.
No, it's a possibility, but I think just to finish off my point, I think Lally could have really continued with that idea. Like, okay, Brian Albert, does it make any sense that he's going to go kill somebody and leave somebody on his lawn and, and like that's the conspiracy? No, continue with that. And that means also Jennifer McCabe's going to get up on the stand and lie. And that means Colin Albert's going to lie. And Allie McCabe is going to lie. And then all these people are going to get together, all going to lie. And everyone's just going to get up on the stand and have no problem. And the paramedics going to lie. And Stephen Sheriff is going to, like, all these police officers or everyone's going to lie for each other. I mean, he could have really made that argument a little bit stronger with this, give me a break about this conspiracy. Now, truthfully, what actually happened, I don't know. I'm not ready to buy this conspiracy at all, by the way. I'm not ready to buy that that's what happened. I don't know what happened. But one thing that I'm pretty confident in saying is that she wasn't hit by a car. That's what those two experts said. That's what the Marie Russell and this other medical examiner said. I'm pretty confident, fine with myself, coming to the conclusion that she did not hit him with the car. Now, how did he die? I don't know. The rest is a big guessing game to me. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So it's not like one or the other.
I know. No, you're right. And I think that's what most people who maybe weren't so sure about this big conspiracy, I think most people who didn't necessarily buy into this 50-person cover up now are like, well, we still don't necessarily know, but what we do know based on these two experts who were not paid by the defense, which is like, wow, that's crazy in a trial like this, that these experts not paid by the defense did not give them the information they needed. They didn't give them any type of report. And these two guys are coming out and saying, nope, this is physically impossible. So yeah, I think that kind of solidifies it for many people. So I mean, there's a few things that I did want to point out that was said during their testimony that I thought was crazy, which was like, let's remind everyone, taillight's plastic. It's not going to puncture all these holes and it's not going to scrape your arm to the point that we saw. It's just not. And then the glass hitting the taillight, that was crazy. They had to make a cannon to show that it wouldn't have shattered it that way. I was just, yeah, my eyes were opened a lot.
And the fact that I think Lally was trying to suggest that, well, there's 37 miles per hour winds going on at that time. You know what that means? Like, just follow that to the logical conclusion. Alan Jackson could have done this. Let's just follow that to the logical conclusion. What does that mean? That means that he wasn't hit holding the glass, right? Because you're suggesting that there's a 37 mile per hour wind that brought that glass, right? So that means he wasn't holding the glass. So then what's your suggestion about how he got hit? That means that he threw the glass at the taillight, then stood in front of it like this. I mean, like, just continue with that line. You could have completely, made mincemeat out of that argument.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Also, by the way,
go
ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I mean, there's also something that there was a clip that I put in my last video that I just uploaded last night, and I thought that, like, this clip really completely just destroyed the whole prosecution. And it was a clip by the second biomechanical engineer, Rentschler, and Lally was trying to say, well, you didn't have this information, you didn't have that evidence, you didn't have this evidence. And he said, I saw all the evidence later and nothing is changing the fact that the physics and mathematics, nothing adds up in this case. And that's why nobody knows how or why he died. Like, he said that, like, as clear as possible. None of your questions make a difference. What evidence I had at the time, what evidence I learned about later, nothing is changing the fact that the physics and science
was a mic drop moment. Yeah,
they don't lie. So and that's something that Alan Jackson quoted in his closing argument. Exactly the quote from Rentschler, which, exactly what I would have done. I would have quoted that exact thing. So
yeah, I thought that you're so right. That was a mic drop moment, because he's like, you don't have all of the information and you never did. And he's like, well, even after the fact, I saw everything, still doesn't make sense. The laws of physics and science still don't make any sense here. And he also cleared things up about when people are like, well, John got sideswiped. That's why he didn't have any injuries. So the doctor, he's kind of like, so John's arm took the brunt of the entire 20, you know what I mean? And then the fact when they said that if the car went in reverse 15 miles per hour and not 24 and would have hit I think it was the glass or an object, it would have had more damage it than Karen's did going 24 miles per hour. So that was very interesting as well. And just going back to these witnesses, the minute they get up on the stand, they have my attention. Their confidence, their speech, everything they're saying, obviously the content coming out of their mouth, but just the fact that they are so unfazed, and they're not jerks about it, right? They don't roll their eyes. They're not like scoffing. They're just answering the questions. You know what I'm saying, right? Like it was just like,
Lauren,
it was like, okay, these are professional people.
yeah, I mean, Lauren, I encounter these type of biomechanical engineers all the time, and I think I've mentioned this in my videos. They are a nightmare to cross-examine. They are just an absolute nightmare because you can't get them on the science, you can't get them on the physics, you can't get them on the math. It's they are, when they're coming up against you in a case, it is a real nightmare to cross-examine them. Now, I also do want to say, not all biomechanical engineers are created equal. These two guys happen to be literally, like Alan Jackson said, the top of their field. I mean, they're being hired by the Department of Defense, for crying out loud. Like these are the NHL is contracting with these people. These aren't just like your average biomechanical engineer, which are hired by an insurance company to dispute you on a car accident or something because they don't want to pay. You know, that's what I deal with. These experts were the real deal. You know, like it's a nightmare to cross-examine them. And after I heard the direct, I was like, sheesh, Lally must be not loving his job right now. Like, how is he ever going to poke holes in these people? And exactly what we found, he probably shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah, no, I know. And just going back to what he said before we wrap up here. And I'll, if you guys want to put some questions in, I'll read them because I'm not highlighting them. If you have any other questions for Brother Counsel, please write them now. But I just wanted to point out when Lally said, oh yeah, it doesn't matter about Michael Proctor. Yes, these texts are vile, but you know, it is what it is. It's just kind of locker room talk. Well, it actually does matter because I mentioned this, but Brian Walsh, who's accused of killing his wife, Anna Walsh, his lawyer, and right there, that murder, the evidence is pretty strong in that murder, like physical evidence. So the fact is, you know, Michael Proctor was the lead investigator on the Walsh case, and now Brian Walsh's lawyer is filing a motion against Proctor. So it does matter, and it might be a little bit of a domino effect. And then we have the Massachusetts State Police that are involved in the Sandra Birchmore investigation. And now we know that the feds are looking into that as well. The Boston Globe put out an article. They had 3 witnesses say, yes, the feds are looking into this. And I think that Karen Reed and Birchmore, they're connected because the same officers are involved in both cases. So I do, in my opinion, I think that, yeah, Proctor's actions and some of the actions here, it's a little more than, oh yeah, it's just like, you know, guy locker room talk, X, Y, Z. It's just, it's more than that in my opinion. But Tommy says, let me look. He was asking, okay, the chain of custody doesn't matter. I think because people were, why didn't they go to John's funeral? I did not know that if they went to John's funeral or not. I think he's talking about the Alberts and the McCabe's. I would have hoped they went to John's funeral, but I don't know the answer to that.
Did Karen go to his funeral?
I would have hoped so too. I mean, I don't know the answer, but somebody, Jeremy Cochran, I have a question. What do you guys think was the single most impactful piece of evidence, either for the prosecution or the defense? I think it was the accident reconstruction from the defense for me, and then it was the lack of accident reconstruction on the prosecution. But Brother Counsel, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think the strongest, or one of the strongest points for the prosecution was, I hit him. That, you know, that they can argue that was some sort of admission that she actually is coming clean and admitting that she actually hit him. But there's also, you know, the DNA that they found on the taillight and some of the fragments that he didn't talk about the fragments that they found in his shirt.
Well, because that's not okay. And going back to the DNA on the taillight, I've said this before.
We didn't talk about the hair.
Oh, well, the way you say hair, guys, sorry, the way that Martin says hair, listen to him say hair. Say it.
Okay, I'm going to change it now. Hair.
No, say it the way you want to say it. He says hair.
Hair.
No, I don't think the hair is a thing. I'm still very confused at how that can travel back and forth.
No, but did you hear Lally's explanation?
What was I maybe, I don't know.
Lally's explanation was that hair was frozen to the taillight. It was frozen, and that's why he showed a picture of the car when it first came. I thought this picture was first came to the Sally Port because I thought they didn't have any pictures of that. But he did show something. Maybe it was a video, a still shot or something of the car when it was frozen, and then when it was already defrosted. And he just simply said, "Well, that here was frozen to the car," because everyone was wondering how does that here stay on the car through 70 miles of being
So it was
towed.
frozen underneath. Like I don't.
Yeah, like that here got stuck onto the vehicle. Then, even though she drove that vehicle back home, back to John O'Keefe's home, it still stayed on for that trip. Then it froze overnight. And then as they were driving it around, it's still stuck there. And all through all the towing, it just got stuck there. And then magically, again, they keep calling it the magic here. But then when it was in the Sally Port and it was defrosting, so all the snow defrosted, but the here stayed on there.
And that's where I'm like, what? Even having it frozen still is strange to me. Where it's like, I don't know. And just going
and
back
the piece of glass was certainly not frozen, right? The piece of glass on the bumper was certainly not frozen to the bumper. So
no,
there's no explanation for that.
It's confusing, but with the DNA on the taillight, and this is definitely buying into a conspiracy. But when Karen was asked about when that came out, and they said, "What do you make of John's DNA being on on your taillight?" and she told the local reporter, "John's DNA is on John's clothes." So right there, you're thinking, okay, well, John's clothes were with Trooper Proctor until about March 14th. So if you do believe in the conspiracy theory, right there, you're going to say, oh, okay, got it. Or did John lean against the car at some point in the night? Did he, when he was waiting for Karen to go outside and they were at the waterfall, did he just lean against? I always lean against the car when I'm waiting. I'm lazy. I just want to like lean on something, I don't know. There's so many different aspects of why his DNA could be on there. And it's that right there is not a smoking gun.
Yeah,
for me.
No, and that's exactly Alan Jackson. That's exactly what he said. He said, of course his DNA is going to be on the car, like it's Karen Reed's car,
right.
the boyfriend girl.
And Tommy Bernhard said Lally lied so much. Nothing was embedded in clothes or bumper. Per his own testimony, the clothes were in a bag with debris from the road. So I don't.
Well, he claimed that he claimed that they were not in the same, that the clothes were not, the clothes were in a different bag than the taillight. So the only way that taillight would be there is if it was embedded in the clothing. I mean, that was what I think came out during the testimony. They were not in the same bag with the taillights and everything. That's
right.
What I remember.
I guess my point was that he held on to the clothes for a long time. And
I mean, that's what the evidence log doesn't start till March, and they had the clothing since January 29th. So what exactly was going on? From the temporary evidence room or storage unit, whatever they call it, it was just sitting there defrosted or drying out, right? And they didn't end up. The first log is March, so that's a decent question.
It's I don't know, that whole thing is like, oh my gosh, I don't want to believe that police, I guess in this case Massachusetts State Police, are this corrupt. I don't want to believe that. I have a hard time with that. I don't like it, and I really don't like the fact that we all had to hear Proctor's text messages with his high school friends, with fellow cops. I mean, it's pretty damaging to them. I do feel that way. It makes me sad. It makes me really sad that that this is the way. And you can argue, oh, they thought that she murdered a fellow cop. Well, I just don't see that being the case, because they never once said his name. Oh, I feel so bad for him. Oh, poor John O'Keefe. He didn't deserve this. All they did was act like misogynist assholes and shit all over her. Excuse my language. So that's, you know what I'm saying though? If you feel it should be about the victim. Poor John. He didn't deserve this. He was such a good person. He was such a good man. And instead it was just all about ripping her. That was very horrible misogynist behavior. And that just showed me that they didn't care about the victim.
That's right. And that's exactly the point that Alan Jackson made near the end of his closing. Like the last thing that the jury he wanted to think about is how disgusting Michael Proctor was, and how he was objectifying her, dehumanizing her talking about
Yeah.
her, in ways that he doesn't even want to repeat, which is,
That was interesting. I'm like, all right, you had no problem repeating it before when you would say, he would like put like a hard K when he would say the F word. Like, I was like, he was really, really into saying that for a while. No, not really, but he really got his point
right.
across. He did. So, everyone, thank you for joining this live. I just want to point out that obviously I'm new. This is only my second live. So thank you for being patient with me as I work this out. So please do subscribe and like. I'm going to do a lot more of these. And please go subscribe to Brother Counsel's YouTube channel. It's just at Brother Counsel. He does great in-depth trial analysis under an hour, which I appreciate, because sometimes when I would miss a day, I would just go to his and I would see. And he doesn't really give opinions. He just explains what things mean, which for me is helpful because I want to form my own opinion without hearing other people's a lot of the time. But I think the next big trial that you most likely are going to cover, Martin, is Alec Baldwin, which I'll be covering as well. But
Yep.
hopefully we'll be back for another one of these when the verdict is out as well. Maybe we can do that. I don't
Sounds
know.
good.
Well,
Now, hopefully it won't
see.
take me 5 minutes to figure out how to, get my sound working.
I
So
know. I'm so glad it wasn't me this time. But yeah.
that's right.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much. And we will see you soon.
All right. Thanks.